But will the Conservative plan help the party in the polls? Both the Liberals and the NDP platforms were released on Saturday, and according to Elections Canada, more than 7 million Canadians have already voted in advance polls. Well, Shachi Kurl is the president of the Angus Reid Institute. She is here to talk about her latest numbers. Shachi, always good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Nice to be with you this evening.
So listen, let's begin with your top line numbers, the latest ones, because the Liberals, according to your institute, are still very much in the lead at 44%, Conservatives at 39%, the NDP a distant third. Does today's platform have the power to help Conservatives close that gap in any way?
Big deep breath as I think about this, because one doesn't want to be too dismissive, but the fact that we are seeing this platform released with mere days left in the campaign after 7.5 million voters have already cast advance ballots, and additionally, it's not just the Conservatives, it's the NDP as well as the Liberals who really waited until the very last possible moments to release these platforms. Says to me that their own campaigns did not put a tremendous amount of stock in convincing Canadians on the merits of these written promises that they say are costed. And of course, there's always, from a political standpoint, a risk. And the earlier you put it out there, the more critics will pick a costed platform apart. But to wait until the Tuesday before a following Monday election, when we know that turnout has been as high as it does, it's almost a tacit admission on part of the campaigns themselves, whether it's a Saturday or a Tuesday. In the last week of the campaign to do this, how many people are they expecting to sway on policy and costed platforms? I would suggest very few.
Yeah, that's certainly a question people are asking. But you know, what is interesting to me, though, when I look at your latest numbers, less the Conservative platform, but in particular, the latest numbers coming from the Angus Reid Institute, one result that really stood out for me was leader momentum, because I would think if one is a Conservative after weeks of trailing in the polls, this has to be some good news for those who support Pierre Poilievre.
It would definitely represent a boost, a morale booster, and a practical booster, just in terms of seeing now the level at which I think in the last 7 days many Canadians have appraised Poilievre and perhaps are seeing him in a slightly different light. He was praised for his English Leaders Debate performance. He was certainly seen in the last couple of weeks to have slightly more authentic moments on the campaign trail, maybe not necessarily authentic moments with members of the parliamentary press gallery or the mainstream media, but in some of the clips we've seen, some of the interactions he's had both with would-be voters and constituents and with his own children. But that said, the bad news to this good news for the Conservatives is it has not really moved the dial in terms of vote intent. We'd already seen the Conservatives narrowing the gap with the Liberals, sitting at 39%, which in any other election, which is what makes this election so unique, Michael, that would have been, basically potentially majority territory for the Conservatives. It's the fact that the Liberals are sitting in the mid-40s, plus or minus a couple points, depending on margin of error, in so many pollsters' results, which really has changed the dynamic of this campaign.
Well, and it also is bearing out in the numbers that I saw that Angus Reid did regarding urban centres. We talked about that just a week ago. Let's pull up the latest board numbers here, because when you're talking about seat-rich GTA, seat-rich Metro Vancouver and Montreal, well, the numbers are there. Talk to us about the trend lines that you're seeing in terms of the race in the urban centres of this country, the largest ones at least.
Well, the trend lines in terms of the progress of this campaign showed, the Liberals shooting up to the loss and the detriment of the NDP in places like Metro Vancouver, in places like the GTA and downtown Toronto and the 416, and to the detriment of the Bloc in parts of Quebec, perhaps not Montreal. The broader point being this: we saw the consolidation of the left of center vote before the writs were even issued in the weeks leading up to that. And so as much of I don't want to call it a non-story, but we haven't seen a tremendous amount of movement over the course of the campaign in those urban ridings. You see there in each of those areas a pretty significant lead for the Liberals, largely formed to the detriment of the NDP, with the Conservatives more or less staying where they have been. So they haven't necessarily lost support, but they haven't been able to match really the consolidation of the left of center vote, which is where we see ourselves now in the cities. A place at situations where the Conservatives at the end of last year, at the beginning of this year, were in really advantageous situations, even in the cities. We're poised to maybe make some breakthroughs in urban centers where they've traditionally really struggled, and all of a sudden finding themselves battling the NDP for second place in some of those areas.
Well, less than a week to go before Election Day, and of course we're going to keep watching to see if any great movement happens. But Shachi, for what you have shared this evening, thank you for that. Always enjoy the time. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Michael.
And that's Shachi Kurl.